Hello, hello, hello. I want to read to you briefly from a text. It's related to our previous section. And this is a text from 1908 entitled The Kybalion, done by the three initiates. This is available as a PDF. The Hermetic Philosophy of Ancient Egypt and Greece by the three initiates. This was done through the Masonic Temple of Chicago, Illinois, the Yogi Publication Society. So this was put out. Something probably the early theosophists said there'd be an externalization of the hierarchy. Madame Blavatsky said this in the late 19th century. And sure enough, this was probably one of the earlier rolling out of what was about to be called the New Age. And this is, again, the idea that there's nothing new. It's a reintroduction of Hermetic texts that had been about throughout the ages, and especially used by the dominant oligarchical classes that we have discussed. We have things in chapter 1. It begins with the Hermetic philosophy. In ancient Egypt dwelt the great adepts and masters who had never been surpassed and who seldom have been equaled. And here's the idea is all the great knowledge was really, it's not that we've had this accumulation of knowledge as the exoteric or the common text would tell us, but in fact, those closest to the real knowledge, the angelic knowledge, had the greatest. And of these, of course, was Hermes Trismegistus, or Hermes thrice great. Some people put him as a contemporary of Moses. The three initiates here consider him a contemporary of Abraham, biblical Abraham. Either way, you get two parallel traditions, two very different takes of the creation of the universe and the cosmology of the universe, the intent of the universe, and our individual purpose upon the earth. And so they began with the idea of the great Hermes, and they're going to unfold or lay out some of this knowledge. And they break it into several chapters. But I want to cut to the chase because one of the themes that I'm going to be hitting on here, both through the esoteric text and into the concept of biopolitics, is this idea of the creation of a master race. So I wanted, and I'll return to this, Kybalion another time, but I just wanted to highlight one of the key ideas here is this is repeated throughout this entire text. And it's this idea that the phenomenon of life and the whole universe as a whole and its parts or its unit has its existence in the mind of the all. And we'll return to this from time to time. It's very much like a hermetic Kabbalistic concept. And so part of that is through human will. One, the adept can do it on behalf of oneself, but on behalf of the collective consciousness, the all. One will bring the potentiality of the all through the force of the universe into existence. This is the great work, or part of the great work. So they're revealing sort of how the universe, Hermes revealed how the universe truly operates and the truly operative, and these were kept secret by the adept. And so, again, we're living in an age here in the 21st century where we're very far into this externalization of the hierarchy, and this information you don't even have to seek it. It's kind of people are putting it out there constantly. And it's really a matter of the will, connected to many different eras of, 1,000-year reigns, and the will that would pull together the forces of the all to make the all. So the all is and is both potential at the same time, a little bit like the idea of one hand clapping if you're hearing this for the first time. But I would like to focus on I'll do a quick reading here of one idea in particular. So they're going to lay out in several chapters how the universe works. Um, Hermes is kind of famous for laying out this phrase we see more and more and more and more and more and more in popular culture. This as above, so below. And what he's sort of suggesting here is that, again, we are the creators. We must make the creators is a process all about evolution. Okay, all about conscious evolution, but it's a designed evolution that has an endpoint, an eschatology. And the word, it is sort of out there so much, it's almost becoming a little overworked, but apotheosis, the idea of the completion, ascension, transcendence. And so, like the alchemical process of combining and recombining, not just of the individual self, but creating the collective. And we see this working through the combining and the recombining of the Hermetic tradition with the Gnostic tradition, with the Rosicrucian tradition and the Theosophic. It's combining and a recombining to bring the great work together. So there is an all, but the all has to be created. In theoretical physics, it's sort of like the Big Bang. The whole project has to be, again, reverse engineered, the reverse engineering of the fall, and the end will be the logos, which, again, in another tradition is the beginning. Okay, so probably got enough mumbo jumbo out there. Let's just focus on this idea here. This is on page 33, where it's talking about the mind. The mind. Again, when we think of all these traditions, it's essentially a part of the Gnostic tradition that through acquiescence or the acquisition from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we transcend good and evil, because in this tradition, they are just concepts that we can put out, and we must think of them as constructions so that we can transcend them. All right. The plane of the human mind, it says here on page 33. In its 7 subdivisions, comprises those manifestations of life and mentality which are common to man, with a capital M. It's very much like the Renaissance project, the humanist idea that would intertwine many of these things. Man, the measure of all things, in his various grades, degrees, and divisions. In this connection, we wish to point out the fact that the average man, the common man, of today occupies but the 4th subdivision of the plane of the human mind. And only the most intelligent have crossed the borders of the 5th subdivision. It has taken the race millions of years to reach this division and beyond. But remember that there have been races before us, and that's sort of the Madame Blavatsky idea of the several pre-Adamic civilizations and races. Our own race is the 5th, with staggers in the 4th. The 5th age, some people are still staggering, which has set foot upon the path. Okay, we got to go on the great path to do the great work to reach this ascension. And there are a few advanced souls of our own race who have outstripped the masses. You see kind of a Platonic idea here of the guardians, the elites that have to sort of shape perceptions and tell their fibs, because it's all part of this larger project. And the adepts, their job is to bring everybody together to this evolutionary point. And Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great, laid out much of the final end game, based in part on some of the previous races and civilizations, hidden knowledge. And then there are a few advanced souls who have outstripped this and who have passed to the 6th and 7th subdivisions, and some few being still further on. the man of the sixth subdivision will be the Superman. So that's what all this gibbery jabbery that I've been doing here is getting to that point. I just want to put that idea, the Superman. You might be familiar with Nietzsche's concept of the Uberman, the Superman. It's going to be this character that's going to rise up and transcend the collective, to bring the collective to this destination, the end game. So the Superman, he is of the seventh and will be the overman, the overman. And again, Nietzsche's ideas from the late 19th century never died. In the universities, they went, not on just to the philosophical philosophy departments of all the universities, informing everything from left to right, fascism, communism, feminism, all the isms are now informed by this. Again, this idea that Cornwallis would say to Washington, that these Kabbalistic ideas would be everywhere. We would make sure that they were part of our thinking, part of all of the paradigms, so that they seem very natural. And so there would be this Superman that would come and guide us into our design destiny. Now, where does this destiny come from? Has it been revealed? Well, apparently to the adepts. And I bring up this text from 1908 because it is consistent with many of the other ones we'll be dealing with from the ages. And I will suggest most forcefully that it is, in fact, a blueprint. And of course, we're going to begin to connect this from the great minds and the great money of today, whether they're Google or whomever else, that's pushing us toward the singularity, transhumanism, and ultimately the Uberman will push us toward post-humanity. And this is where we're at. This is how we hear terms. It'll come out in a major news publication, post-human, by the 2004. What is this? 20 some years away, and it's announcing that there will no longer be humans. And of course, it's in the films and everything else. And this is just matter of fact. No more human. We'll get all stressed out about a dying owl someplace that we've never seen or never been to. But the end of humanity, that's where we're at as a people, that there will be no more Homo sapiens by design. By design. This isn't you can't just, you have to get out of your accidental view of history for a moment. By design, we, and part of the project, maybe they'll keep a few around, walk them around on a leash or something, put them in a zoo, but that's where things are going. Okay, so that's there's a consistency between Plato and the Kybalion of 1908, and that idea over and over, whether we're talking about Machiavelli or Montesquieu, the great minds have housed this esoteric knowledge and revealed pieces here and there in what are called the great works of Western literature and Western thought. But now we're living in a time where it's just being put out there. However, it's done with a significant degree of social programming. So obviously, if you go to a theater, which I tend not to do, it seems to me like 2 or 3 out of 4 films will have this theme embedded within it. So that's just a little reading from the Kybalion, from the 3 initiates in 1908. And I want to sort of tidy up this little part of Esoterica, the deep state and the esoteric deep state. And I'm going to, because sometimes I'm kind of wondering, have we really established that the oligarchs just love the esoteric, that they really believe this stuff? And I want to I got endless quotes that will connect the oligarchical class. I just grabbed recently with their quotes both about the New World Order and their need to have the New World Order, world federalism, in order to achieve the Uberman and the destiny of man, which in part is to overcome man. And again, you cannot not tie this to the biblical tradition. In the biblical tradition, developed this, man cannot save himself through his own will or knowledge. All he can do is follow a plan by whom he has to, through faith, understand is the creator, and reuniting with that creator is the plan of ascension, transcendence, or salvation, redemption. And so redemption comes through a surrendering of the will and a surrendering of the intellect. That's one tradition. We're talking about the opposing tradition. So we're seeing two, as I'll discuss briefly when I return to this topic, two different visions of this singularity. There's a biblical singularity. That's defined as the plan of the Bible. And then there's Ray Kurzweil's plan of singularity. Each and every day in the science news and the political news and the economic news and the leisure news and the cultural news, and they're all interconnecting into a sort of alchemical pattern again. And the idea of an Uberman, a little hard for us to get our heads around, but it's the final page of the great work. So thank you for joining Dr. Deep State.